Our Brownie here. Today we're gonna talk about deck builders. So there was a game, Slay the Spire, that I discovered a while back, and from what I understand, it kind of changed everything for deck builders. Like a lot of roguelike deck builders have come out of the woodwork since, and there have been some way before Slay the Spire as well. Dream Quest comes to mind as one of them, and there's probably a few others, but it's been a genre that's been really developing recently, and there's been a lot of new ones that have come out. And a lot of them seem to kind of run together, like a lot of them will have the same mechanics. You have your block, you have your attack, you have your elemental status conditions like poison, you have burn, you have shock, all those kind of things. And it's tempting to say based on that they're all the same. But today I want to go over 3 roguelike deck builders that are all 3 of them are in early access, and just examine what they do different. So things might change from what I say now. They might get better, they might get worse, hopefully not worse. But let's just see what we have here. The first one I want to talk about is Rise of the Slime, and as I jokingly call it sometimes, Slime the Spire, because it's very similar. But I'll talk about what's different. So it oozes charm, it has a cute whistling slime, and popsicle stick style, and it takes a story kind of in a similar vein as the anime That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, where the protagonist is reborn as a slime in a new world, and they're supposed to go kind of liberate everyone and save the day. So the main difference in this game, it has a lot of the same elements, but the main difference is positioning. It affects everything you do. Well, not quite everything, because there are some ranged cards, but certain attacks, like the basic sword swipe, will only work if you're near the enemy. Every deck also has movement cards in it, which are in addition to the basic cards that I talked earlier, which will move you basically 1 or 2 spaces. And this is used to get yourself closer, to get yourself further away. It can also get you behind the enemy, because what also matters is orientation. You can be facing towards or away an enemy, and when you're attacking an enemy that's facing away from you, there's a backstab mechanic, where you do double damage if you're behind an opponent. And this mechanic is also really important for terrain. There's, at the moment, fire and poison terrain, which, as you can imagine, apply the status effect, burning or poison, if you're on them. So you take damage for having the status modifier, and being on this terrain increases the amount of the status modifier every turn. You start with a basic deck, but later on you unlock starter decks that are designed around this kind of terrain. Like there's a fire deck and a poison deck. There's also a mixed deck, which is random cards, and I don't really recommend that because it doesn't work together at all. But anyways, they have effects that help you in that terrain. Sometimes, like, if you're on fire or poison, maybe they'll give you defense based in your fire or poison stack. They'll share your fire or poison with enemies. They'll even heal you based on how much fire or poison you have. So in that way, not only is getting the enemies to be on the terrain important, but getting you to be on there is important as well. So far, I think the game is pretty solid, but it needs some more diverse play options. There's only, at the moment, just fire and poison and basic, and that's kind of it. The gameplay can also be a little bit slow, since it seems like the best way to do things is to really slow down the gameplay, throw things from afar, just kind of sit back and like watch all the bigger enemies burn poison because they'll kill you in 1 or 2 hits. But so far I like what I see, and they should really keep it up. Next up we have Deep in the Forest, which is a deck builder about saving the forest, which is taken over by a tyrant. And then after the forest is taken over, none of the other animals in the forest seem to trust you, and they all trust the tyrant. But that's not the important part. The important part here is the combo system. So when you play one type of card before another type, and the types are denoted by a symbol in the top left corner, you might get bonus effects. So this changes the strategy because it's not necessarily about just playing the right cards and getting the right effects, but how to create the best combo of cards, how to get the most out of the cards that you have by playing in the right order. The other big thing here is that you can remove cards from play to get more energy. So you can right click on a card to trash it, and this card goes away until the end of the battle. But by doing this, you get more energy that you can use every turn during the battle. So this allows you, this has 2 effects here. It allows you to simultaneously control your deck and be able to play every card. And by controlling your deck, you can make sure that cards chain to each other better, that you have the right energy levels for cards to play, all that good stuff. So there's kind of two facets to that strategy. There are lots of items to acquire too that have bonus, usually one-time effects that you can take into battle. There's like a basic item bag, and there's the backpack that you take into battle. And the items might be like 1 pixel or like 4 pixels long, and they might be like Tetris shapes. Then those you can take into battle have special effects like healing you, getting extra XP, kind of that thing. Also, a lot of enemies have extra effects, like some enemies will hit you twice as hard if you hit them for a certain amount. Although I will say it's kind of hard to see these extra effects until it's too late. Usually there's little symbols and you hover over them, but you don't really know which symbols do what. But I do think the game has a little bit more in-depth strategy than the other two, because you need to know how cards chain into each other, and also whether you want high-cost cards, which are less of them, or chains of low-cost cards. I find usually the chains of low-cost cards do a bit better. The other thing is that gold is used for both card effects and to buy cards. So there are cards that allow you to pay gold to have some super awesome effect. But you might want to save that gold for after battle, because then you'll be able to buy some better cards, or maybe buy some healing or something. I think this is one of the harder ones of the games that I'm covering today, because sometimes you'll just blow up in one turn. Some enemy will be too hard to beat, and they'll just annihilate you. It's hard to prepare for that kind of thing. It requires remembering to use those artifacts to succeed, but you also have to remember to equip these before battle. There are multiple areas to play in, which adds to the play diversity, but I'm not really sure what the differences between the areas are aside from the bosses. The last game that I want to talk about, and this is probably the most different one from the other two, actually it's definitely the most different one, is Meteorfall Crewman's Tale. And I don't quite get the story of this one, but it has an aesthetic that reminds me of Adventure Time. And it follows a completely different style than the previous two games. The deck is mixed with monsters on a board, and it's a very mobile-friendly board, so I think the game is on mobile as well.
Will be needed.
But in this deck, you can either buy the cards, or you can get rid of them, and getting rid of them recovers some health. You recover 2 health for most of the enemies, and you get some coins. And then the cards that you do buy can be used as you choose. The cards that you can buy range between weapons, which boost your attack power, defense, which helps block an attack from the enemy, or spells, which is a use that usually a one-use item, but some of them have infinite uses, where you can apply some other effects to the board or the monsters, or your health. Most of these weapons and defense have a durability, and without them you have a basic attack amount. You don't have any defense, but usually deal about 2 damage when you're able to. And there's a limited amount of tiles you can hold, kind of like your hand. I think it's 4 tiles. When you get a new one, you have to discard another tile. So how the battle works is there's also monsters on the board, and you can click on one to initiate battle with the monster. And then this becomes a turn-based sequence, like you choose which weapons or defense to equip, or you can use spells at the same time. And you can use those weapons to boost your attack, use defense to block, and that continues until either you run away from battle, which I think you can do at any time, but the monster just gets another hit on you, or just keep going until you win or lose. And then each time you clear the board, it's like beating a new level. So then you get effects that help you either just bone effects, like doing 1 more damage in your first time. The card effects work in monsters on the board even without a battle. So there's kind of 2 different phases of being able to do damage. These can apply status effects like Burn, which Burn affects a monster when it drops down and they lose 1 hit point. Or there's Freeze, I forget what that one does. But it can also do damage to everything in a row, or everything on the board, or 1 monster on the board. The monsters also have a lot of special properties, which you can hover over to view. Some of them can't be blocked, some of them deal damage if they reach the bottom of the board, and some of them you can't use weapons, so you have to just do it with your bare hands. There's a lot of different archetypes you can play in this game, and it's only in early access, which is pretty cool. There's a standard one, and then there's another archetype that's more focused on spells, where you get to do the majority of damage outside of battle, and not focus too much on the weapons. The weapons also have additional effects. Some of them can kind of recover durability. There's a lot of strategy to use here. Generally, The challenge in this comic comes from figuring out which weapons to draft, which spells to draft, which to get rid of for more gold or health, and which to use at which point, because there's also a parry mechanic when you block, and that allows you to hit the enemy next time. If you block equal to or more than what it attacks, you can hit the enemy for free without the monster attacking for like one turn. So there's a lot of strategy determining when and where to use things, and it's a pretty challenging game, but I really like it so far. It's only improving. It just came out in early access. There's a lot to do there. And yeah, that's Meteorfall Semester Tale. In summary, there's a lot going on in the whole world of deck builders. There's way more than just Slay the Spire or any of the other ones that you hear in the mainstream. There's a lot of different mechanics being tested, different formats being explored, and I'm really excited to see what happens. I'll definitely be checking out a lot of these games myself. I'll be checking out many more deck builders in the future, and excited to keep up with the ones I covered as they make their way out of early access. If you like this video, make sure to sub. You can also check me out on Twitch, where I do many more things live, and bye everyone.